Hello and welcome back to the Starter Glamping Business Podcast. Today we're joined by Nathan Woods, who is a brand builder for early stage consumer startups, but also has a particular focus on the hospitality space. He's previously the marketing manager at Farm Treehouse in Tennessee, which is one of, if not the most successful independent glamping companies in the US. It's a fantastic site. It does incredibly well, and they're pretty well known in the space as well. So we're going to go into that a little bit today. Apologies, by the way, if my audio quality isn't the best. We're trying to fix my mic at the minute. Hopefully it's not too much of a distraction. But first of all, Nathan, welcome to the show. Please just give us a bit of an introduction as to who you are, your background, and how you got into the hospitality space.
Yeah, Nick, thanks for having me on. I feel still as a newbie in the glamping space, and so anytime I get to connect with people that have been in it longer than I have is always a treat. I have a decade now experience just generally found myself in the earlier stage of companies, and that goes back to event companies and putting on some of the biggest track and field athletics meetings here in the United States, here in Eugene, Oregon. So I kind of got started with that out of my career, moved into consumer goods, helping brands or built a brand myself within the supplement and consumer goods space with a couple other founders, a company called Run Gum, which is a caffeinated chewing gum that we took from a direct consumer business, scaled it up to nationwide distribution, Target and Walmart, and then kind of parlayed that into the role that I had with Farm Treehouse, with kind of an ode to getting back to what I wanted to be always doing, which was hospitality. I got actually into the track and field business and event business because of my desire to be in hospitality, and at the time thought more the sport event side of things was the route I wanted to go. And then I laugh and said I got sidetracked for a decade building a supplement brand. And that's where outside of that, like I mentioned, I live here in Oregon, Eugene, Springfield, Oregon, which is kind of home of the University of Oregon. And I have the pleasure to be married to my wife now of almost 13 years. We have three kids, ages 9, 7, and 4. And then outside of when I'm doing the role of work, you can find me on the river fly fishing, in the backyard making pizzas and gardening and just enjoying what being in the Valley of Oregon, being an hour up into the mountains and an hour to the coast gets to allow me to have.
Yeah, clearly a passion for the outdoors as well, and you know that's probably what took you to Bolt Farm, as you say. Just before we dive into Bolt Farm and your work there and some of the cool things you did, could you just give us a bit of an overview of what Bolt Farm Treehouse is, where it is, what kind of units they have, and a general idea of how successful they've been?
Yeah, Bolt Farm Treehouse was founded about 2015 era by a member of a rock band called Need to Breathe, Seth Bolt. He started it off with his original treehouse in South Carolina that he built for his honeymoon and his wedding with his wife, Tori. They are the founders of Bolt Farm Treehouse, and they have now taken that one treehouse in South Carolina and have built out a mountaintop retreat outside of in between Nashville and Chattanooga in a town called Whitwell on a majestic mountain top with views that will inspire you to find your passion again. They've been on this mountaintop. They've built to this point 18 with way more units to come, with luxury tree houses, luxury glamping domes, and they were the first to bring in some the mirror cabins that you're starting to see pop up here in the United States. They have 55 acres up there, and they're really transitioning away from just a short-term rental property, which is kind of what they had been, very specific to Airbnbs, to a full-fledged direct booking mountaintop retreat geared for couples that want to rest and reconnect with each other, their purpose, and nature. And as of now, they've just recently launched a treehouse spa with more and more spa amenities to come, and expanding food and beverage options, and really moving more into the resort realm by way of kind of a short-term rental start.
And how did that opportunity to join Bolt Farm come about?
It started by being a fan. I mean, never had stayed there, but being a fan first of Seth and the music that he played with Need to Breathe, and for a long time, for decades. And then kind of uniquely, when as he started building his first treehouse, my dad, his brothers, and a little bit of me started building a treehouse on the Oregon coast. Not to the level of what he built, nor is it something that's rented out, but it is, a substantial, infrastructure treehouse with, electrical and plumbing. So kind of was just following along the journey. And then as they continued to build their business and go from the one treehouse to then building four more in Charleston area before they sold that to build Tennessee, I was just following along. And at the time, I was a decade into building Run Gum and kind of, was ready for a change of pace and my wife was definitely ready for a change of pace, and just started engaging them with initially on social, and then they just applied for a role that I didn't really think was a fit, but at very least would get me in have a conversation with them. And we eventually did talk there in the summer of 2022, and kind of, I think, just so much aligned hearts for what hospitality is and what it can be. And then my combined knowledge and in the ground building of a direct to consumer business really had a lot of applicable skills and sets that they were wanting for what they were, mainly a direct booking business. And so just a lot of alignment, and it came together. So I joined in late October 2022 to really just lead a lot of their brand and marketing, knowing that it's focused on direct consumer. They're getting less and less Airbnb bookings. They weren't on any other OTAs, and it was how do we drive mainly their social audience and get them to book directly. And so it's just a lot of alignment. I kind of say it was a big collision of things, just because prior to that I was really looking back to get into hospitality, really starting to trying to figure out the posture of hospitality outside the industry. And then between that, building the treehouse myself, fan of the band, it was just a great collision and a great timing to join what they had already started building.
Yeah, and when I look at Bolt Farm, I've been aware of them for a long time. I think it's impossible not to be if you study the industry, just because of how successful they are. Two things stick out to me. One is how passionate and how much care the founders take over every aspect of that location. How to the from the tiny details of the individual units and how the interiors are designed, but also how passionate they speak about those things and about the site and hospitality in general. The other thing that really sticks out to me is how slick their marketing is. When you go on the website, they've got the standard kind of if you know marketing, the kind of tactics that good marketing companies use, then you recognize them on their site, with the pop-ups, with the easy sign up to the newsletter. They do text alerts as well, and presumably you had a pretty big hand in that side of things. So that's what we want to dive into today, to really get an idea of what is sophisticated what sophisticated marketing strategies that our audience might be able to implement that have been so successfully implemented at Bolt Farm. So the first thing, and I want to kind of go into is pretty broad. The first few things I want to go into are pretty broad. Social media, we talk about it all the time. It kind of goes hand in hand with the Instagrammability of glamping. It allows for direct bookings rather than paying Airbnb commissions, etc. So could you just give us an idea of the social media strategy that you used at Bolt Farm, and maybe any particularly cool campaigns that you ran whilst you were there?
Yeah, I first have to preface, I came into something that Seth and Tori had built beautifully as far as what their Instagram had been. And what it was, and so I didn't inherit something from scratch, or really have to inherit anything because it's still theirs. But I got to come in at a timing where it's hey, this already had hundreds of thousands of people engaged with it, and so they had done such a wonderful job, and still do to this day, of being engaging founders. I think it's so interesting because you see it a lot more in the consumer space, celebrity-esque founders that are going to be very involved with their brand, and you're seeing them launch brands all the time. You're seeing less in hospitality, but they did have that luxury of people knew Seth. The band was already a big time thing, and so they were able to parlay that relationship really well they obviously are very charismatic founders. And so as they built this out and as they were on the grounds truly building it, they just did so much founder based content that made it like people feel there was a connection with what they were building. So many of the guests come and they already feel like they're connected to Seth and Tori and what Bolt Farm is, which is such an important thing when you think of social media, like versus just a very sterile thing. There's that human connection, which they did so well building before I even showed up.
Yeah, and just before we get on to what you did, can I just ask what kind of content they would create that would allow people to feel like they knew them?
They weren't afraid to put their faces on the camera, right? And so whether it's just the raw, like they're obviously they did, and we continued to through my time there spent a lot of effort in making sure we had beautiful visuals from the photographers and videographers who do that as a job, but also weren't afraid to grab the camera and just face it to themselves and talk about what they're building, what they're doing. And so I think the combo of putting their face to it and showing that, hey, we are here putting hammers or putting nails into the walls and building this thing from the ground was something that I think you see it happens so well in a lot of product companies come from a founder who like shows how much they're involved. And so from day one they had that, and then they were also able to attract, because of relationships, people to come in from that day one, and from getting celebrities and influencers and friends and artists to come stay, and kind of getting early in on that kind of influencer reach out and the power of that, and how that then allowed for press and media from Netflix and shows on Magnolia Network, and getting featured in there, that everything went back into the Instagram platform. And then when I showed up, I think it was kind of even more of a post stuff that gets engagement. Don't worry about if it's always the prettiest thing. Let's drive content that's engagement. Now I say that it's really hard to make anything at Bolt Farm not pretty and amazing, because it's just the units are bar none amazing, and the property and the scenery and the views are amazing. So it was pretty easy to have great visual content, but also paying attention to the trends, paying attention to the sounds that are trending, and really focusing on the type of content that you kind of knew that it's going to evoke some kind of emotion, which you see so many travel based influencers able to do. It's like there's that emotion that hits when you see that beautiful view or that mountain that just entices people to engage with it, and then figuring out ways to double down on that, to making sure it gets shared, and people are tagging their partners or their friends that this is the place we want to go. So it was a pretty strategic effort on like thinking about like what is the right sound, the view, the first scene of the reel that's going to get seen, that's going to get people to stop. Because if you don't do that, then there's no point really to be posting, because it just gets lost.
Yeah, and that's very similar to what we had a guy called Derry Green on a few months back, who has a small site in the UK, but he's so switched on marketing wise, and he designed his unit not around. Obviously, he considered what the guest experience would be like, but he designed the unit primarily around, okay, what's going to look really good on an Instagram reel within half a second of that reel, and that's. It's hard for people to understand how those algorithms work unless they actually spend time on them, read into them. But honestly, it is so important that you capture someone's attention within 30 seconds, and less than 30 seconds, within half a second, really. And it doesn't. It might be you shouting at the camera to grab their attention, but sometimes it's just the right angle with the right music or whatever it may be, and presumably you iterated a lot, you tested a lot, and kind of spent a lot of time figuring out, okay, what actually does grab people's attention, because once you grab, the more attention you grab, the more engagement there is, and the better it performs. So I presume you did quite a lot of testing and figuring out how that all worked.
Yeah, a lot of testing, a lot of trying, like you have to know within it, like, hey, you're going to have a similar concept that does get the millions of views, and then you're going to post the similar concept that gets nothing. And knowing that, but then also not being afraid to repost stuff that does work. And so, there's often times that we, took the same concept or the same exact piece of content and just threw it back out and said, hey, engage with this, and generally saw just as much engagement again. So I think that's another thing. It's like thinking as a whatever kind of brand and whatever kind of how you work within the social world, like that you have to have like a different piece of content all the time, or that your feed specifically needs to look a certain way when most people aren't even going into your like profile feed. So like the fact that like, hey, reposting the similar content, the same content, knowing that that's what people engage with, and especially like the stuff that goes viral, like it's not your audience that's seeing most of that. It's new people. So if you post it again, it's going to be another new set of people that are engaging with it. And so it's, yeah, it was a constant kind of try, see what works, realize that doesn't work. And, the other thing I think we found that I've found as well is posting about us wasn't ever going to, you knew that content was, it's like in the caption, if you immediately said like, come check out this or reserve now, you knew that was going to fail versus getting people to imagine, think, or do some kind of call to action within the caption or the overlay that's about the audience. I always perform better versus like bragging about what we have. Now, I'm not saying that all, like sometimes the guests engaged with the stuff if we had an announcement or something, but for the most part, like bragging about what we have or constantly calling out or CTAing them to book now or reserve now also is a spot where it's like it just wouldn't perform. So it's always kind of looking back like how's the audience actually going to engage with it, not as a good they're going to book a stay from that one reel, but they're going to engage with it more and more so it actually has reach.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to emphasize that the algorithm for, let's say, Instagram has changed massively compared to 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, you'd only really see the people that you followed, the people that you signed up to seeing, essentially. Now, since the arrival of TikTok, which has its For You page, which basically you can scroll in, it doesn't really matter who you follow because the algorithm is so good that it can tell what you're interested in without the follow being having much of an impact. So now Instagram and a lot of all the other platforms have followed that, and now people will probably notice they don't really see pictures of their friends or family anymore. For me it's cooking recipes, which I don't follow chefs on Instagram, but it always pops up to an annoying degree, to be honest. And that's why there's been a bit of a move, say an era. We had a guy, Ben Wolf, on who owns a site called An Era in Texas. Their content it's not this is our site. The caption isn't like, oh, this is our site. It's this, how amazing is this beautiful site in Texas. Basically, it speaks kind of impersonally in a third person kind of way because it's geared towards people who might see it for the first time, and that's what kind of generates the engagement. So it's I'm sure there's a balance to be struck between creating content for the people who have followed you and who know who you are, but also almost creating it impersonally designed for that first time watcher, designed to go viral and get that engagement. So how did you strike that balance between that almost impersonal content that was aimed at the first time viewer versus building the relationship with the audience that actually do follow you?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a couple of things. One, and it's something they had started before I got there, well before, but continued to be an important space for our more engaged followers and definitely our guests is a Facebook group. Like at the time I left, we had 18,000 within a private Facebook group, and that's where a little more of the intimate conversations, more of behind the scenes. That's for people that really are really interested, and even some special offers, last minute deals, last minute stays within this very special Facebook group. And so a lot of the initial was getting people from obviously Instagram into that Facebook group or other lists, but getting into that Facebook group allowed us to do same kind of content, but just in a more of an in-depth way. And you generally weren't posting the same content at all. Like maybe occasionally you'd like, hey, go check out this, or you'd almost give your Facebook group a call to action when you wanted something to go. Okay, hey, this is go check out this reel and comment on it, because it's, and asking them for help on some of that. Right? It's like, hey, go help us go engage with this one, because you knew that you can get people engaged on the one post. That's going to help. And then we really utilize, I go back to the word engagement, like realizing that all these platforms are not publishing platforms. While we publish posts and all that, they're engagement platforms. And so how we engaged in comments and DMs and beyond was something we put a lot of effort into, and brought people on that was their own job. Their job was just engage in the comments, engage in the tagged photos, engaged in the hashtags, engage in DMs, engage in people who just share the story and just saying thank you and for being engaging. And so spend a lot of time just having, almost full time, someone in the platforms just engaging back, knowing that, one, the platform likes when you're actually engaging and not just pushing. But knowing that from the perspective of the person, like, oh, this brand's actually going to engage with us. They're going to comment on things. They're going to respond to my message within a minute in the DMs and things like that. That it goes back to kind of the heart of hospitality. Like, we actually want to welcome you here now. Like, we always kind of said, hospitality for us started in the DMs. It doesn't start when they showed up on the mountaintop. It's knowing that so much of our bookings comes from Instagram. It starts there. And that's what we wanted to do. And so I think that was the other important thing that was being done, that we probably got pushed even to a higher level while I was there, and continues now that I've gone away.
So you'd have people there specifically to just reply to all messages, reply to comments, and that helped build those relationships and convert interest to actual bookings.
Yeah, we get bookings, and before we hired some of those people, like, I would be in the DMs, and I know we go like direct booking websites, direct booking on your website. We get direct booking from the DMs by, sending them their specific dates that they wanted with a link to just check out right in the DMs. And we get creative with that. Sometimes it would be, taking our phones and doing a video of like, hey, we're in the unit. This is going to be the unit you're staying in. Click that link now, and very personalized, straight from the DMs, because you're seeing it right now. And obviously hospitality and the systems to do it at the level of e-commerce is doing it within TikTok shop and Instagram shop. Is you're seeing obviously this trend of people being willing to just shop right within the platform. And so that was kind of a way to do it. Obviously not an integrated way that like you're seeing in the TikTok shop stuff now, but I think it was a way to like, let's make it easy for someone to actually do it versus, hey, now go over here or go call this number. We still did that, but like if we could get them to book right in the DMs, we were going to go for it.
Amazing. Did you do paid ads at all?
We did. It was interspersely before I showed up, and then I came in and we put together. We weren't spending wild amounts of money, but we were consistently spending, especially within a retargeting audience that we found to be always performing. Coming from a consumer goods at like $20, coming from that world, like always performing with a return on ad spend that was, again, from a decade in e-commerce, I was shocked that we were constantly getting that kind of return on ad spend. Obviously different economics when it comes to margins and on all that. So it took a little bit to getting used to, like, and knowing what was that a great return on ad spend for us. But most of it, and what I found was retargeting was where we found the most success in ads. If you were just trying to get a return on your initial ad spend, that was always hard, or top of market awareness ads. But retargeting audiences, retargeting our email list, retargeting people who just engaged with our social performed really well. And there was ads that I turned on the day one that to this day are still running because they just perform well. And we obviously constantly test and put in new creative and things like that, but some of them just kept rolling. And the social proof, when you start seeing something that has like 1,000 shares, 1,000 comments, that comes through your feed, it was performing well. And, I think, I'll fully admit, like, I'm not a paid ads expert, and there's still a lot that can be done there, that, you're not, especially within independent boutique, glamping world, you're not seeing a ton of it yet, but I think there's still a lot of opportunity to figure out the top line awareness ads within the space, but also Also, we had to realize like it wasn't about return on ad spend all the time as much as just our marketing efficient ratio for all of spend versus all the bookings. So a lot to figure out, but I was always, pretty like, I was excited to see the return on ad spends in the space coming from a world that like, hey, if you get 1-to-1 on that first purchase, you're good to go.
Yeah. Well, you might have seen me typing away. I'm making a ton of notes for Posh Outdoors' marketing effort. So this is a great episode for me as well. You mentioned email marketing. How was that implemented at Bolt Farm?
That was like the first thing I got going when I showed up there in late October or late 2022, and I think there was, they had a big list as it was, but it was kind of just a send all campaign. And between the system they were using and just the knowledge of how you can segment, it was kind of based and no automation, just kind of here's a list and they'd send out campaigns. And so right when I got in, I that was like day one, kind of get that kind of built, and from automations to segmentations, and then a consistent flow on just one-off campaigns. I found it interesting when I came into the space for the first time in hospitality, like how, I guess, little integrated systems are when it came to some of this stuff. And, there are some players like Revenate, but they're not integrated with all the PMSs, and even the PMSs that are connected aren't really getting all the information into these systems from an email platform. So I kind of did what, instead of having to try to learn a new system, figure it out, we ended up just building a custom API into the system I came from, which was Klaviyo. Very e-commerce focused email marketing and SMS marketing platform. And we custom built into it. We used some Zapier integrations to get some other information, and then just started building out, all the automations from a welcome nurturing flow from when they first got on the list to after they book, abandoned cart email, automation flows, and other win backs from the very start, and kind of built that for a year. And then over the course of this last 6 months, we brought on someone who, is another deeper level expert within email marketing to do even more than what we had done or that I had done.
Now, I'm conscious some of what you just said will sound like a foreign language to a lot of our audience. So all I would say is...
yeah, we can break it down.
Yeah, well, all I'll say is I think all of that stuff, which, again, is built on years of experience in marketing. If you're serious about marketing, I would seriously suggest speaking to someone like Nathan, who understands, because there's so much you can go into. There's so there's so many bookings and so much money to be hoovered up from doing proper marketing techniques.
Like, there were months and months. I think 2023 we were average about 30% of our top line bookings revenue came from email marketing. Over 50% of that were those automations. So it's like, of, the millions of dollars that Bolt Farm brought in 2023, nearly a third of that was email marketing, and half of that was those welcome flows, those abandoned cart emails, things like that once you get going and once you got segmented, they're just, you don't have to do the work to do it. You're going in and optimizing them, but you're not having constantly. And over the course of these last 6 months, there was months where it was 40-50% of our total revenue. So I think, and that's what's common in e-commerce, is you generally see 30-40% of your revenue comes from your owned audience within email and SMS, and it was definitely the same.
And with your experience in e-commerce, we also had a guy, Austin Trimble from Lucky Arrow Retreat in Texas, and he had a similar background. He was in D2C marketing and sales before. Actually, it wasn't D2C. It was in some kind of software sales. And again, it's bringing that experience from outside of the industry, understanding of marketing and sales, and you put it into glamping, which already has a ridiculously good ridiculously good business model that is very easy to sell, and it supercharges it, and that's why it's really exciting bringing people like yourself on, because people who have never even thought about marketing before, just if the aim of this is to just get across just how powerful it can be, and to start thinking about, okay, maybe we do bring in someone who understands what they're doing on that front. And I promise this is the last Posh Outdoors plug. Anyone who's thinking of investing, we do intend to get this sophisticated with our marketing, and to apply this to all of our partner sites. So Nathan, we might need to have a chat about you coming and working for us at some point.
There's just a lot of simple things you can do that, you think, hey, we need to have an email pop up on our site, and you say, hey, get 10% off on this email pop up. And what we had done instead of that first pop up was, hey, when are you looking to stay? And you would select a spring or fall, and then it's the actually input of your email. So now instead of the email of, hey, here's your 10% off code, but we have no more idea when you want to show up. It's like, hey, we know this person's thinking about a fall trip. Let's start giving them information about the fall, versus like talking about spring, because they already told us, hey, they're thinking about fall versus right now. And so there's just a lot of easy things that a lot of these email platforms or third-party pop-ups just from the email collection allow you to do, so you can be just slightly more personalized and actually get the content that's best to your future guests, versus just being blanking it as if they're all the same, because they're not.
Yeah, and we've covered a lot of technical marketing topics now that might be harder for operators who don't have that background to implement themselves. I do want to talk about some creative ideas that you implemented at Bolt Farm. And when I asked you for those, you mentioned postcards and reconnection cards. So could you just tell us a little bit about those things, what they were, and the kind of effect they had on the business?
Yeah, first, postcards kind of is a little bit, kind of comes from the technical side of direct consumer side of things a little bit, because the way we did it was there was some manual aspects of it, but eventually it turned into automated process where, hey, if someone abandoned their cart and never checked out, we had a system that would send them a reminder postcard of like, hey, don't forget, here's your code with some, specific things. And, there's platforms out there, less engaged in the hospitality because it's such a fragmented tech stack. But e-commerce wise, we were able to kind of hack our way. Just personalized, and they can be personalized because they're kind of on demand printed. You can like get them personalized. So it'd be like, hey, Nick, we can't wait to welcome you at Bolt Farm. Remember to use this code. And so those would be automated at different segments. And we didn't scratch the surface of what I think could have been done there, from like a welcome postcard after they've booked, hey, 30 days before check-in, get this like beautiful, like kind of welcome brochure type of thing that could be very personalized the way the system worked out. And so that was one that was fun to bring into, coming from the world that I had been in, just because I had developed a really good relationship with one of the platforms called Postpilot. And so I'm hopefully as they grow and I continue in the space, and hopefully coming alongside other brands, can continue to bring this idea into hospitality, because I think it is, it does perform, like it just does. And it was harder to track all that within the world because not all the systems were connected again, but like, tracking different codes that we used, like it brought people in, and whether it was, hey, they forgot about it and they're finally ready at, day 60 to book, that postcard was what kind of was the final thing that got them over, because it was just such a unique thing. And then another creative idea, and this was less for marketing, this was less for getting people in the doors, but more of the experience that we wanted guests to have at Bolt Farm, which is, we truly do want you to stop, rest, reconnect with yourself and with your partners. We designed and built, printed out these, conversation starters that are branded to Bolt Farm with questions, and these were just in the room when you showed up. And I think the amount of kind of photos or images or reviews that once we started implementing that we were getting, that it's just more of a special thing, right? Because we knew it was impacting the guest experience. And then they're going home with something that, as they continued to use this for their relationship back home, it was Bolt Farm's kind of top of mind, and that experience that they had was always there. And there's been times where we've kind of since then used it as a way to like send these little packages out to past guests who we haven't maybe seen in a while, as a rebooking kind of offer and campaign. And so they're kind of just a really useful way to get the brand in front of somebody, but more importantly, carry that brand into what we want our guests to experience, which is that rest and reconnection. And so, I mean, simple, like we were able to print and get those out for under $2. And so when you think of like a $2 gift, it kind of reminds me of Will Guidara's story about the $2 hot dog. Like, I mean, for $2, that one hot dog went a long way for the guests in his restaurant. For $2, like this impact versus trying to think of like a thing that was going to cost us hundreds of dollars to get them to come back. Like this is going to have a bigger impact on the guest and how they feel about our brand than some lavish gift.
Yeah, and I mean we've covered a lot of aspects of Bolt Farm, particularly on the marketing side. You've mentioned how the property is stunning. I've mentioned how the founders are pretty unique. If you could boil Bolt Farm Treehouse's success down to one singular factor, what would you say that would be?
I'd like to think it's all the marketing, right? Like, hey, the social media is the way that we approached it. But I think, it's when you go into the Google reviews, you go into TripAdvisor, and you truly see hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of 5-star reviews. And it's the guests saying the experience they had once they showed up. That's kind of the telling story. It's, we do great with marketing and we get people to show up on the property, but we actually then over deliver the experience that they have once they're there. It's hard to say that's not what's the magic within it. It's the magic of the mountaintop that has been what is allowing them to continue to grow, continue to invest, continue to put more efforts, because our guests are having the experience, and we put a lot of effort into that from the staff that we have on the property, that are focused on that. Like they're focused. We stole stuff. We already had the person on the staff, but we stole the idea again from Unreasonable Hospitality of a Dream. We were like, your job is to figure out what this guest wants, what they need, and let's go knock their socks off. So I think it's hard to say that that's not what the magic is like, guests are having the experience they wait. And from blogs and reviews that we read and realize that this is having a great impact on their lives and their relationships. I mean, I think that is the magic, and it allows them to continue to market it in a way that brings more and more people into that. And those reviews are what has allowed Bolt Farm to get 2024's TripAdvisor People Choice Award and get into the Condé Nast for this next year to vote. It's not, the Instagram helps, having a great Instagram helps, and having an email list and getting people there, but it's people when you go into TripAdvisor and see, there's almost exclusively 100% 5-star reviews.
Yeah, important reminder. I think, we get really excited about the marketing, website, everything like that, the views. But if the guest experience isn't good, then you're not going to be successful, and that's the absolute core of things. So I think that's a pretty good reminder. So you've since moved on from Bolt Farm. What are you up to now, Nathan?
I'm kind of taking a little bit of I won't say a complete stopgap by any means, because I feel like I'm just as busy. No, not as much, but moving in more into just consulting and coaching within branding and marketing for all sorts of brands. So from the events world, some consumer brands, and still in the hospitality space. I feel really called more to hospitality. So I have some brands that are kind of getting me through kind of this next stage of the journey, as I'm kind of allowed Bolt Farm to be a perfect stop during kind of as I journeying through kind of my journey as a career. And so really passionate about hospitality. So still trying to be involved with, especially younger brands, that it's hard to do the marketing stuff when you're also trying to operate. And, the experience that allowed me to have through all these years of being part of the ground floor is like, I can wear almost all the marketing hats at a high level and can kind of come in at this stage of a younger brand and provide the services. So a lot of consulting within, like I said, brand and marketing spaces, like I said, a little slower because my wife and I are going to Africa here in about a month, 3 weeks. So get to go experience that, and then I'll come back and get the ball rolling with a few more initiatives. One, kind of looking in potentially into maybe my first little initiative within the glamping space that I own, and then also launching some outdoor hospitality retreats geared for leaders who need rest, need to know that they're seen so that they can go back and be in their workplace and the places that they do at the highest level. So think outdoor fly fishing retreats, things like that, but with five-star care. We won't necessarily have always a 5-star venue, but we're going to give 5-star care with how we do it. And so kind of a multifaceted hospitality approach. And even within how I do the marketing consulting, it's a very hospitality focused way of doing it.
And what is it about hospitality that attracts you so much, and what does it mean to you?
Man, at the heart of it, like the posture of hospitality is allowing someone to feel seen and welcome. I think regardless of it's the industry of hospitality or bringing people into my home, like I think hospitality is by far the greatest way to allow someone to feel loved and valued. And I think it's when we feel loved and valued, we can go out and do our best work. When we don't feel loved and valued, it's really hard to feel confident about going and doing that. And so I think that's the thing that gets me excited the most about hospitality outside of the industry. Like for me, that is that. And there's just so many different avenues and way to do that. Yes, industry, hospitality, glamping, you can do that with very unique ways, from your DMs in your marketing to the moment they leave. You can also do that within your business place when you're a leader. How do you welcome people in? And from that standpoint, like hospitality is, again, the one thing that when people feel welcome with you here, they're going to go with you there, if that makes sense. And so when I think of just from leadership to marketing to everything, like hospitality is such the basis to get people to respond however you need them to respond, marketing to leadership and everything. And so thinking hospitality is this multifaceted idea, not just, again, industry, not just in my home, but how hospitality can be intertwined into everything we do, I think gets me most excited about waking up every morning. And yes, I want to be involved in a lot of different ways. And I think I feel led to not think of it just as hospitality and, hey, you need to have a venue or a property to provide hospitality, but thinking how you can provide hospitality beyond just that. And I think the skills and the opportunities and the people I've had in my life throughout it all, I think is setting me up to be able to see it bigger and do it. I won't say bigger than it's already done, but just do it differently.
Beautiful. If anyone wants to get in touch with you to ask about your marketing and branding services, how do they go about doing that?
Well, I'm sure the LinkedIn post that you'll have here for this will be linked to that. Probably the easiest is just nathanwoods.me, and I have all my links to Twitter and Instagram and email and phone. And at some point when I come back from Africa, I'll maybe get a website up and talk about a little bit more about what I do and how I'm going to do it. But for now, I just kind of got a little landing page. But yeah, LinkedIn, engaged in Twitter, because that was the more direct consumers more over on Twitter for some reason. And so a lot there, but finding more and more opportunities to engage with y'all special people in hospitality and glamping. So it's super exciting to do that and excited to continue to do that at a deeper level.
Amazing. Well, I'm sure we'll be having you on when you venture into your own little project, which sounds very intriguing. Enjoy Africa, Nathan. And thank you. I think that's been an amazing episode. And again, the one thing I want to emphasize is the importance of, if you really want to go all in on marketing, it's speaking to someone like Nathan who really understands it deeply. So thank you, Nathan. That was really helpful.
I appreciate you, Nathan. Thank you.